Hey Facebook people. Hi. Hello there. Yeah, I've been meaning to do a live stream all weekend and I haven't really got round to it. I was going to do one yesterday but got caught up in Easter egg hunts and cooking roast lunch and all the rest of it. But I really did want to come on and just share. Now this may take some time, but one of the really interesting things about this lockdown period, as I'm sure you're all feeling, is how wonderful it is to have so much time for deep contemplation, for deep healing, and for really, really tuning in. And certainly here, I mean, the grid is very beautiful in Bakewell anyway, because we're in the midst of nature. But every time I walk down into town, which normally on a bank holiday weekend would be chaos in Bakewell with tourists, it's so peaceful and it's so empty, and the grid is very calm, and it's very wonderful when all of the busyness stops. And what happens is when the busyness stops, everything gets very calm, like a very calm lake. And in that place of stillness and calmness, it's much easier to tune in and to fully feel. Now, fully feeling is of course a double-edged sword, because when we're in the crazy busyness, it's very easy to not fully feel. But when we get to this place of stillness, we start to fully feel. And so I'm sure for a lot of you, a lot of stuff is coming up. And I know in my world of evolutionaries and therapists and healers and light workers, everything that needs to be looked at is now coming up to the surface. I just want to say hello to everyone who's watching. Lots of people joining right now. Just gonna send you a little tuning in. So this may take some time, so if you can't stay on, you may want to just tune back in and come back to this later, because I wanted to share some insights with you around Easter, around the crucifixion and resurrection, and tying all of this into my own life experience, and hopefully it will become apparent to you as we go through this journey. And so it's a difficult thing to know where to start. I could start this journey at a lot of different places. Hi Sarah, hi Lisa. Lisa's saying there's been mighty astrology bringing this energy up too. Yeah, absolutely. And I may touch on astrology at some point. But the place I want to join this journey on is my recent trip to Peru. Now, I made a pilgrimage to Sipapu in Peru, which is where Davina McHale and Nizami 13, they crowdfunded a retreat center there a couple of years ago. At the time I was on their Natural Wisdom Leaders program, and I've been kind of mentoring them around kind of the way to kind of structure that, and they're two of my greatest friends and teachers. And I really wanted to go out to spend some time with them. They were doing their very first retreat out there. And, oh look, is that my son? Make me a cup. I don't know if you can see me, Eddie. Could you make me a cup of tea, please, darling? Yeah, thank you. Just through in there. I'm in the conservatory, just seeing through into the kitchen there. Yeah, and actually I took my son Eddie with me on that journey because I thought I really don't want to leave him alone. But I knew I had to go, and I thought, well, why don't I take him with me? It would be an amazing initiation for him, a journey of discovery beyond the kind of limited horizons of Bakewell. Beautiful as though it is here, it is very parochial and quite sheltered, and I just thought, wouldn't it be great just to go on that kind of pilgrimage. So of course, when you go on any spiritual pilgrimage, as I'm sure you will know, you set an intention of what you want to work on during your time there. And so for me, the big thing that I really wanted to go deep on was peace. How to find peace in my own life, in my own world, how to create peace on the planet. It's a very big thing for us right now. How do we create peace? And of course, so many people have been praying for peace. So many people have been asking for peace to prevail, and yet faced with all of the challenges of the world, it's very difficult with the logical mind to work out how could that ever prevail, how could peace ever prevail amidst all of the chaos and confusion and the busyness and the war and the poverty and the scarcity and the turmoil and the conflict. I mean, it's just, how can any of us engineer that? So of course, with all of this work, we have to hand it over to Great Spirit. Keep handing it over to Great Spirit. Keep tuning in. Keep coming back to center. Keep connecting to Source. Emptying out and just praying and asking to be shown and to be guided as to where the next healing, the next piece of healing, the next piece of inspiration. So to cut a long story short, that was my intention of going to Peru. How do I find peace? I have been going through a lot of turmoil in my own life, facing lots of fear around the future, worrying about where I'm going to live and where the money's going to come from. So feeling a lot of root chakra fear, that real deep fear, especially as a mother, especially as a mother. How am I going to keep all of my plates spinning? How am I going to hold my home together? How am I going to keep putting food on the table? How am I going to make it safe for everyone as all of my sons, find their way in the world? That's a big thing. And also holding a lot of anger as well over a lot of things about having my home kind of stolen from me, really. Going just beyond the whole story of that, just fully feeling really these two things, fear and anger. And of course, those are the two polarities of the trauma response. They are what is behind all fight and all flight, is rooted in anger and fear. And so mastery really is about transcending anger and fear. So anyway, it's a very interesting thing then. On the first night, the shaman came down from the mountains to work with us. Puma, amazing shaman who I have worked with. This was my 4th trip to Peru, so I'd worked with him already 3 times before in 3 previous pilgrimages. And the first night, we had 3 ceremonies. And the first night, and I just want to add as well that although I took my son Eddie, he was there in the ceremony, but he didn't partake. He literally these ceremonies go on through the night, so he literally just laid by my side, kind of holding the space and sleeping and resting while we were all kind of experiencing all of this stuff. So the first night, I was having set this intention for peace, and this is the thing about intentions, and I'm sure you know this if you're on the spiritual path, is that whatever you ask for, very often you're shown the exact opposite. So of course, being shown peace in this very first journey, I was shown anger, and I was shown conflict, and I was plunged into war and World War II and all the rest of it, and I mentioned that on a previous live stream. In the second night's ceremony, I was taken home, back to the home that I'd left. And I was shown in this journey all of the darkness that I would have to clear if I went back to that home. Now bear in mind, I'd kind of shed that home a bit like a snake shedding its skin after my first pilgrimage to Peru, where there was a lot of snake energy, and everything had come to a really intense head, and I had no option but to leave at that point. I was forced into a position where I really had no option but to leave. So anyway, in this journey I was taken back to my home, and I was shown really clearly all of the darkness, all of the dark energy that I would have to clear if I went back there. Now the very interesting thing is that the next morning when I woke up from the sleep after that intense ceremony, boom, a bit like when you wake up from a dream and you just woken up from the most vivid dream, I had this incredible download for a book, and the title, the content, the cover design, I mean literally there, like as this great gift, this great piece of inspirational gift, like downloaded in one chunk of energetic information. And so I was like, wow, a bit like when you wake from a very powerful dream, you know that you have to write it down and remember it, because otherwise it will dissipate and slip away. So I immediately got out my journal and I sketched the cover that I'd been shown, and I wrote down all of the outline of the content. And this book, the title of this book is Liberation. It's very interesting, very powerful. Liberation. You need to write a book about liberation. And I was given all of the content, all of the kind of key points. So I couldn't write the whole book, but I wrote down all of the kind of key pieces that I would have to write about. And then what I did is I acquired, when I got back home, I acquired a journal. And I started to write the book. I started to flesh out all of the content, and I started to write the book. And I very deliberately, the previous books that I've written on a laptop, but I very deliberately didn't want to type this book in a laptop, because I didn't want the interference of electrical energy. So I decided to write in a journal, and I just writing in pencil, which is much easier way to write, because one of the things, and this is a top tip if you are a writer, an author, or you're thinking of writing, when you type into a computer, there's a tremendous temptation to go back and edit and reread and edit what you've done. And it is much more powerful to download completely, mistakes and all, into a journal and get down all the content, because once you've downloaded all the content, then you can put it into a computer, shape it up, tweak it, tighten it, improve the grammar, flesh out various bits of it. But at least you've got it laid down, basically. So anyway, gosh, I don't know if Eddie did actually get my little signing there to bring a cup of tea, maybe not. So anyway, I wrote the first chunk, like a lot of, like probably half of this book, I actually wrote in the 2 days before my attack. And if you'd seen on Facebook, I was attacked and beaten around the head in an incident. And I don't want to go too much into the detail of that because it's pending a court hearing. But suffice to say, it was like a pattern interrupt shock of a scenario unfolding, which was incredibly intense and very, very, how can I say, shocking. Shocking is the word. And I got afterwards, I was in absolute shock trauma. And I know from doing my trauma healing, trauma training that I definitely went into after the attack. It was so traumatizing, and I was beaten around the head. I was in a state of kind of shock, extreme shock response. Yeah, so one of the interesting things about that night was that, in a twist of fate, but actually looking back, I can see in a strange way a gift, because this is the thing with this work, is like, and hi Eddie, actually Eddie is watching there. Eddie, sweetie, did you see me calling to see if you would bring me a cup of tea, darling? If you're still watching, please, would you bring me a cup of tea while I'm doing this, because I might be here for some time. Thanks, Eddie. Yeah, so in a twist of fate, I ended up in a police cell that night, and it was just like insane. My head had been beaten, and it was just kind of, and like at 3 a.m. they bring me, they say your solicitor's here, and they bring me to interview, and then in the morning, then they let me back, and I was sleeping, just grateful just to be able to lie down and rest, to be quite honest, because I was really in a lot of pain. And a very kind policewoman, if you're a woman who goes into a police cell, there's always a policewoman on duty, and so she's assigned to you. So if you ring the bell, you get like actually quite a sweet policewoman come through. And so they bring you various things. So she brought me an extra blanket, and she brought me a really lovely soft white towel, which I made into a little pillow, because frozen pillows are very hard. And also the thing is, you're allowed, it's a bit like the Desert Island Discs, you're allowed a book, and you're allowed a pen and paper, you're allowed a few little luxuries. So I asked for a pen and paper, pen and pencil, a paper and pencil, and I actually asked for the Bible to be brought to me. And yes, a bit like Desert Island Discs, just minus the music, and minus the beach. But I did get a Bible, and I got a paper and pencil. And anyway, one of the things that I really got in that, I mean, it was pretty dark. Not in the sense, well, it was dark. It was actually dark in the sense of dark, but there's a light in your cell. And they're like, can you switch the light off? And like, no, love, sorry, the light stays on. So even though it was dark, there's always this light. But a very interesting experience. And I so got, as I was there, of like, this is a cosmic test. This is a cosmic test of, can I find my way back to the light in this darkness? So I was just opening, as you do, opening the Bible into just like a place of wisdom, just trusting that wherever I opened, it would land to a place of wisdom. And I ended up doing a little drawing of Jesus in my cell, just thinking, that would be really good, just to have that little kind of, some kind of deity to work with. So here's my little sketch that I did. This is in Chesterfield Police Station on the 17th of March. I am the Alpha and the Omega. I am the light. I'm the I am the light of the world. That's what I wrote on there. So it's very interesting to be in that, plunged into that justice system. And then next morning, the policeman came and said, we're releasing you on bail. And they were quite sweet, actually. And this police officer came to take my fingerprints. And it was like, trying to get my fingerprints, and it's just like the computer just kept saying error, error, like they couldn't take my fingerprints. And I said, I guess I'm just not cut out to be a criminal. And he just said, love, you don't belong here, do you? And I said, well, not really. But I do get that I was very definitely being shown the justice system. And so this is kind of coming on to a really key thing I just want to share about Easter, Jesus, the crucifixion. Also, I posted Jesus Christ Superstar on Saturday night, which I watched again and realised after I posted that, I was there that night that was recorded at Wembley Arena. I just managed to get a ticket and I went on my own. And I remember that night because Andrew Lloyd Webber came on at the very end, and at the end of the show everyone was rushing to leave, obviously to get like trains and the last tube home or something. And I'm just like, the show hasn't finished, why is everyone rushing out? So I thought, no, I always stay to the very end of things, even in the cinema. I always watch all the credits right to the very end. And I'm glad I stayed, because as they were doing all the applause after all of that finished, suddenly, boom, Andrew Lloyd Webber appeared on stage, and it was just the most amazing spectacle of Jesus Christ Superstar. But if you watch that contemporary portrayal of what is a great musical, the portrayal of Pontius Pilate and all of the kind of people, the jailers were modern day police and judges, all dressed in black and white, and black, white and grey. And this is the really interesting thing, is that any time, this is like a spiritual guidance here, any time in this illusion of reality you're in an absolute black and white situation. So you think about that. If you go to court, it's absolute black and white. The judges wear black and white, everything's black and white, the barristers, everyone dresses in black and white. And if you're involved in the police, it's all black and white, right? Okay, maybe a bit of a high-vis jacket every now and then, but generally speaking, it's black and white. And what that is symbolizing is that you are in the most intense expression of yin yang in this 3D reality. So in other words, there's no rainbow, there's no color, there's no compassion, there's no heart. It just literally is, it just is black and white. It just is justice, just is. And so in that place, it's all mind, it's all yes, no, right, wrong, guilty, not guilty, very black and white. And it is the realm of the mind. And that is why I wanted to show you this, that in the tarot, the justice card, here's the justice card, it's number 11 card. And she is holding a sword. And if you know tarot, you will know that the swords are all about the mind. And so when we are completely in the mind is where all pain and suffering is in the mind. And the liberation from suffering is through dropping to the heart. I might talk about that in a minute. Another very interesting thing, because obviously this is the 11th card in the tarot. And here's the second card. Notice the comparison between those two cards. The High Priestess, which is number 2, and Justice, which is number 11. Both of them sitting between the pillars of the temple, the 11, the 2 pillars representing a portal for enlightenment. So it's very interesting, these 2 cards at an esoteric level. If you, the tarot holds huge amounts of metaphysical wisdom to help us navigate our way through the labyrinth of this realm. So that is the interesting thing about the Justice card. And the other interesting thing about this Justice card is notice that the judge, which actually I'm pretty sure is a woman, in this. Justice is a woman. She's wearing a red robe. Now, if you look up the history of the legal system in the British courts, that the judges traditionally only wear red robes on a red letter day, which is a saint's day in the calendar and the Queen's birthday. Those are the red letter days, and to mark a red letter day, that is when the judge wears red. So that's another interesting little thing, if you know that was my first business, red letter day. So that's quite poignant, the deep meaning of that. So just to go back to this black and white system, it's like the extreme expression of when we are so completely in the mind and in that just logical yes, no, black, white, guilty, not guilty mode, where there is no heart, there is no compassion, there is no empathy. Now, just to give you another little illustration of that, when I went back to my meeting last week, had to go back to have my to go and have my bail hearing. It was quite interesting because as I was standing there, with the police officer, and actually there were police officers behind the desk, and there was one beside me, and there was this sound, this bang, 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 just a relentless banging that I could hear. It wasn't a workman. It was just like this rhythmic banging. So one of the police officers says to the other police officer, I hear we got another drummer in. It's like, yeah, he's been banging like that all morning. And at least he's keeping a good rhythm though, but soon he'll get bored. Sorry, I'm doing I'm overlaying an Essex accent onto those police officers. Obviously, we're in Derbyshire here. And just in that moment, I just felt so much compassion, not for the man in the cell, but for how difficult it must be to be a police officer, because when you in that job, imagine it, just how much trauma, how much you're dealing with the most traumatized end of society. You're dealing with all people's anger, all people's fury, all people's pain expressing itself into crime, and you're having to not be, how could you be in a place, how could you be an empath and be a police officer? It would be very, very difficult to do that job. So there has to be a hardening. There has to be a hardening of compassion and empathy. I'm not saying the police officers have no compassion and empathy, because I did experience it actually on that morning when I was in the police cells myself. But there has to be this hardening to be able to go into really difficult situations and just to be the sword of right, wrong, yes, no, and make a decision without that heart place coming into it. And so this is one of the really important essences, and this is going to take some time, and thank you to those who are listening, and I may take some time to explain this, because there's a lot of deep stuff that I want to share. But this is the essence when you start to learn about trauma healing, is that when we are young and we experience trauma, and most trauma that adults carry is embedded in childhood. So when we're young and we're in a highly traumatic situation and we can't fight and we can't flight because we're overwhelmed, what happens is that all of that huge kinetic energy, which would otherwise be expended in fighting our attacker or running away really, really, really fast, all of that huge kinetic energy, boom, is locked down and it's frozen. and it's literally frozen into the grid, into our energetic grid. And so what happens is that we close down and we have frozen trauma. And what actually happens over time, if we experience trauma after trauma after trauma, maybe through bad parenting, maybe through command and control parenting, maybe being verbally abused, being told we're not good enough, being told we're lazy, being shamed for not being good at school, for not passing our subjects, which this is developmental trauma, which is drip trauma. It's called developmental trauma. Or there may be shock trauma, where we were actually attacked or sexually abused or hit. So as a child, what happens is that all of that trauma freezes down and it locks down, and it basically, it kind of creates an armor. It creates like a protective armor shell. And so a lot of people who have a lot of trauma hold a lot of tension, and particularly in their neck and their arms. It's like we're on predator alert, and we've learned through childhood to be on predator alert. I'm going to adjust my position here. Oh, in fact, let me just go into a little yoga position here. That's better. So what happens is we end up kind of on predator alert, and we end up quite often, if you have a lot of trauma, you end up either stuck on or stuck off. And stuck on, people tend to be highly stressed, highly anxious, finding it really difficult to rest, really difficult to sleep, really difficult to relax, really difficult to meditate, in busyness the whole time, busy. So when you're stuck on, you tend to talk fast and you're highly adrenaline and you get triggered easily. So that's stuck on. And the other opposite of that is being stuck off, and that is when people get very low and depressed and ill and become victims, so that they are almost like they are permanently in a place of inability, of not having full access to life force energy. So what happens with trauma is that trauma healing, and the process of trauma healing, is about how we can start to loosen that armor, and we can start to unfreeze the frozen trauma and thaw it and start to fully feel again, because when we're frozen, we're numb and we can't feel. And so as we start to work with this, we gently start to thaw the frozen trauma, and our hearts start to open again, so that we can start to access the deep pain and wounding that is lying there. And as we thaw it, we can start to work with it. And as we start to shine the light of conscious awareness on it, we can start to heal it and transmute it. And while we have all of that kinetic energy which is frozen in us, we're very easily triggered into fight, flight. And so that is why people who are criminals are people who have got a lot of unresolved childhood trauma, which is playing out in their lives. And so this is a really interesting, fascinating area. So let me just want to say on that, so the thing about this frozen trauma, it's really important to realize, and I've been really shown this in medicine teachings, is that whatever we haven't dealt with in here, all of those blind spots, those frozen pieces of trauma that we can't access because we can't feel them, because we don't know they're there, we start to manifest them on the outside. So our shadow self starts to appear on the window of our experience of this 3D reality illusion, that at some level we manifest perfect matches to this inner shadow. So nothing is a coincidence, and we are master manifestors of everything in this creation. So the point is, How did I manifest that? What is this here to teach me? What is this here to show me? And how can I really go deep? And so this is the whole point about, this is one of the really interesting gifts about whether you're put in a police cell and you're given loads of time to think about something, or whether you're in lockdown and you're forced into stillness, so you have to start really going deep. So this is the kind of hidden esoteric meaning of the next card after Justice. It's the Hanged Man. Because when the judge decides that you are guilty, and then you have your punishment, which turns your life upside down, that is how you get to enlightenment. And that is why the Hanged Man, which is the next card after Justice, has got the crown of enlightenment. So it's very interesting teachings in the tarot, and a lot of prisoners reach their enlightenment in prison. Now this brings me on to another very interesting part of the story, because obviously in my whole persona as entrepreneur, dragon, speaker, I get invited to do all sorts of things. Frequently I'm asked to go on assignments for no money, which I sometimes do if I feel that it's something really important. And so on 2 occasions in recent years I've been invited to go to prison. So the first time I went to go to speak in a prison was when, and I forget, it was a prison up north and I forget the name, this is probably 5-6 years ago. And they were opening an enterprise unit, and one of the police officers who'd been assigned to this enterprise unit, or the directors who'd been appointed, who had a lot of experience in the justice system, he was telling me, he was saying that there was a time in the prison system where they used to have 4 different factory sheds. And they put the prisoners to work in these 4 different zones, these 4 different factory sheds. Oh, hey, sweetie. Hi. Hold this thought. This is important. You're going to want to listen to this. Oh, darling, thank you. Sure. That's really sweet for you. You all right, darling? Yeah. Good. My cup of tea has arrived. Thanks, Eddie. Okay. Right. So let's just put that there to brew. Okay, so in the prisons, this is in the olden days, they used to have 4 different workshops, factories, area zones. In the first factory, the prisoners were made to cast with like plaster of Paris gnomes. So that was their job. So they made hundreds and hundreds of these white plaster cast gnomes. And in the second factory, the prisoner's job in that factory was to paint the gnomes. So they were set to the task. So all these white gnomes come in every day, hundreds of white gnomes from the first factory, and all these prisoners, their task is to sit there and paint the gnomes. The next factory, a work area, their assignment was to take sledgehammers and smash the gnomes to pieces. And the next workspace assignment is to take all of the pieces of the gnomes and dig them into hardcore. So it's very interesting to go into these worlds and to start to tune in and to start to understand what is going on in our justice systems, and to be given a window through into these things. So that was a really interesting experience, and even though they had given all of these prisoners opportunities to do little enterprise schemes, there was no route for them to actually make any money or create any wealth in either for themselves or for the prison or for charity even. There was no monetization of everything that they were creating. So they'd assigned all these prisoners these possible enterprise projects, but with no monetization. It was a very peculiar kind of strange situation. Anyway, my second visit to prison was to HM Prison in Humber. Now, this was in 2017, and so I was asked to go and speak there because, again, they launched an enterprise initiative which was about rehabilitating prisoners. I think it was a Category 4 prison, so it's like the least intense prison experience, where you get taken as you're being rehabilitated for release. So all of these prisoners had been in the prison system maybe for years and years, and they were all in their final sort of year where they're being rehabilitated to be released and being kind of given training opportunities. And one of them was in enterprise, and I was just called in to talk about business and enterprise. And one of the things I said to them, which is something I share with every audience, and this is from a deep understanding of having mentored many thousands of through group work and programs and one-to-one stuff and all the rest of it over many years. And the thing that I said to them is, please put something you love at the heart of your business. Don't just chase money, because when you just chase money in business, you will fail every time. You might make some, but at some point you will fail. It will be taken away from you if it's only about the money. Make it about love. Do something that you love, and trust that some way at some point the money will find a way to manifest. And it may not be directly linear. You just have to trust that the universe is going to take care of you until that point comes in when you can monetize it. But don't sell out on your heart. So anyway, I did my talk, and it was great, and it was really interesting to see these men, because you could tell that they had kind of been not broken by the system, but their spirit had been broken into compliance, and they were all just obediently dotting every I, crossing every T, because they just wanted to get out of there and get back to their wives and their loved ones. So it's just like all of their fire, their spark, their drive of that individualism had been they just had been honed down into just being compliant, kind of yes people, just to get through the experience. Actually quite sad in a way. Anyway, so after we had finished the talk, and bear in mind this talk was right in the heart of the prison, so they took me through all of the grounds and all of the barbed wire and fencing into this block right in the middle of the prison. And in the middle of that central building was this kind of octagonal space with a high roof and skylight windows. And then afterwards the vicar came to me. There's not a vicar, but a holy person who was the prison spiritual pastor. Vicar. I don't think they call them vicars because they're interfaith people. So anyway, this spiritual person came to me, and she said, "Do you like our church?" And I said, "Oh my goodness, is this a church?" She said, "Yeah, this is our chapel. And would you like to see Jesus?" So this landed with me this morning. How poignant this is. So I'm like, oh yeah, because I'd love to see Jesus. She said, come let me show you the statue of Jesus. And behind this curtain, she drew back the curtain, and it was just like this awesome statue of Jesus on the cross. Like absolutely life-size, like quite contemporary but quite classical, if you get my drift. Obviously a modern thing, but done in a classical style. And it was very interesting that he was there for the whole time. but they covered him up for our meeting. They closed the curtains so he couldn't be seen. And I would never have known, I would never really have known that it was a chapel. It just looked like an octagonal room to me. There wasn't any particularly spiritual stuff around that kind of was immediately, oh, I'm in a place of worship here. It just seemed like a kind of octagonal meeting room. But then I was just like, oh my God. And just, yeah, so that was pretty profound when I really downloaded that this morning, just like how poignant that is. That, and this is the interesting thing about life, is that it's like a series of clues. Steve Jobs talks about this, about joining the dots, because we're given lots of clues through our entire life, and yet they're like pieces of a jigsaw that when you start putting them together and you get meaning and they all fit together, you go, oh my goodness, I'm starting to download some really powerful teachings here. So this is a really interesting thing, because going back to Jesus and the crucifixion, now of course all of us on the spiritual path, we all want love and light, don't we? Love and light, and listen to Esther Hicks, get on your high flying disc, law of attraction, get lots of juicy, lovely stuff into our lives. But the truth is, and if you look at the teachings of the life of the Buddha, the story of the Buddha, look at the story of Jesus, that every enlightened master, and actually Jesus was the Son of God, so it wasn't even as if he was a man who achieved enlightenment. He was sent down to teach us. They were all forced through huge battles with demons, or facing Satan, or even being crucified. And I mean, just imagine that. If God was your father, God, why have you forsaken me? Like, if God was your father allows you to be beaten and to be persecuted and to be whipped and to have a crown of thorns put on your head and to be crucified and jeered in the most horrendous way. But of course, he had to walk through that fire, walk through the fires of fear and crucifixion as the great teaching to influence thousands and thousands of people in the 2,000 years, almost 2,000 years since that point. And in that image of the cross is absolute enlightened wisdom, that if we can come off this horizontal plane of duality, the yin yang, the yes, no, the right, wrong, the good, bad, that plane of judgment of duality, and if we can come back to that vertical alignment, that place of the heart, if we can come back to that place, that alignment with Great Spirit, to the Great Spirit that lies beyond this illusion, that is our salvation. And so to do that, we have to come back to the heart, because that is the meeting point between the cross. The meeting point is the heart. So, wow, where else do I go with this? So there's lots of places I could go with this, and thank you all for staying on. This could take some time, and I don't want to get into your messages. Lots of people sending me messages, I might answer them later. I want to keep on the track of this. So anyway, so obviously this huge, coming back to my personal situation, it's been very strong for me. I'm not allowed to see my children. My youngest two children, I haven't seen them now for 4 weeks. I'm feeling the injustice of that. I'm feeling the sadness of that. I'm feeling the pain of that, not being able to look after them. I've been writing them letters. My friend Fiona said, look, Rachel, if you can't speak to them, just write them letters. So I've been writing every now and then. I wrote them Easter letters yesterday. So just leaving the letters when they'll read them at some point, just so they know that I love them. And yeah, but anyway, I get that this this time I've been given to really go deep with not just my own healing because I've had these head injuries, and it's I just know from past experience, you know, you need to give a lot of time for head injuries, but also to do this deep work. And I've been reading, the other great gift of this, as well as being able to journal and to be creative and to tune in and just lie on the earth and just meditate. I've also done a lot of reading, and I've been reading the Wetiko book, which I'm kind of 2/3 of the way through that. I mentioned that a few weeks ago. It's a very intense book, so I'm reading a little portions of it. And the Wetiko book is about the nature of evil, but it's about it talks a lot about the Jungian Shadow, which basically is all those pieces of ourselves, all the shadow aspects of ourselves which we can't bear to look at, which are too painful to look at, or too horrible to look at, or bits of us that we despise and we've buried deep, and bits of us that we don't want to own. We've projected out there, and we've manifested them. So then this journey becomes looking at our shadow self and understanding all of these demons that are manifesting. What are they here to teach us? What are they here to show us? Because at some level they are all gifts. So I thought to myself, okay, so I need to get to the bottom of this. I need to get to the bottom of this. Hold on, let's just have a sip of tea before I go into the next chunk of this little story. Thanks for your patience, everyone. I'm sure you've all got plenty of time on your hands. Maybe you run out of Netflix things to watch. So I thought, I'm determined to get to the bottom of this. So I thought, okay, I need to look at the astrology chart of my attacker, because therein will lie the clue. Because to me, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm an astrologer, I'm just a keen amateur astrologer, and I've followed it since I was a teenager, and I've trained with Kaipacha, but I've never really done a proper full training, but been to workshops and stuff, and I watch all of the astrology reports, and I've osmosed and had many readings. So I see astrology as a grand treasure map, because there are always clues, and the universe is speaking through signs, symbols, through everything, and astrology is a great way of tuning in and seeing the clues. So luckily I have the astrology chart of my attacker, and I've done a synastry chart which maps my chart onto her chart, so that I can really look at what's going on here. Now, the very interesting thing about her chart is how much perfection there is in it. Now, in astrology, all of the planets have a home sign, and when a planet is in its home sign, it's called its dignity. So basically, it's kind of, that sign is the essence of the planet. So the interesting thing is that Mercury is in Gemini, which is, Mercury is the messenger of the gods. It's the planet of communication, and it's in its home sign. So it's like, this person is a messenger of the gods. So this is the really interesting thing, is like the gates of Dharma are boundless. What that means is everything is a teaching. The gates of Dharma are boundless. So every single thing in this illusion has, at some level, everything that we're picking up on, particularly things we're triggered by, everything has a teaching, and everything has a meaning, and everything therefore is a blessing at some level if you can dig deep enough to get to the blessing. So this is a messenger of the gods has come to me. The second interesting thing is Venus, which is the divine feminine, actually rules two signs. It rules Taurus and Gemini, but in this chart it's in Taurus, and Venus in Taurus is the essence of Gaia, the Earth Mother, the essence of Gaia, the Earth Mother. It's very interesting. Very interesting that Venus is exactly opposite my Venus in Scorpio. So this Taurus-Scorpio axis in astrology is all about life and death, all about transformation, life and death. Material realm resources and shared resources. So Taurus to Gemini literally is about life and death, and literally about the flow of that yin yang, life through death. So very interesting. Next planet, Mars in Aries, pure fire, the warrior, right? It's like, fuck. So, I mean, Mars in Aries is pure fire. I mean, that is someone who is a warrior, who literally, or like an amazing sports person. It's absolute pure masculine energy, and it's fire energy. And, you know, fire is the most direct and powerful. I mean, all of the elements are powerful in their own ways, but fire is just that immediate. So we've got Mars in Aries here. Wow. So big capacity for fire. And fire obviously includes anger, violence, attack, but also alchemy. I mean, fire is alchemy as well. Cooking is alchemy. You know, you add heat to food and you transform it. So fire is very cleansing. So all of elements, no element is good or bad. This is the point. They have fire is very beneficial, and it can be totally destructive, but it can be totally beneficial. And what else do we have in the home signs? We have Saturn in Saturn in Capricorn. And Saturn in Capricorn is the strict father. The strict father. You will obey my rules. I mean, Saturn in Capricorn is very much the patriarchal control system. That is the justice system. It's the straitjacket. It's the rules, the regulations. And it is the strict father. But Saturn is if you think of the dollar sign, Saturn is the spine. Saturn is the structure which holds things up. So again, let's not diss Saturn. We need structure. You know, the dollar sign is a spine with a S. It's the structure of the spine with the flow of Kundalini. So so this is discipline of this is meeting the father. So as the mother is the flow of the water in Cancer, and the Capricorn is the mountain of the father, fixed earth. And then of course we have Pluto in Scorpio. So those of you who know your astrology, that is pure Kali energy. Hey Jill, hi. Hello to everyone who's watching. If you are still 18 people on, that's good. Not sure if it's the same 18 people that I started with, but hey. So of course Pluto in Scorpio, pure Kali energy. So Pluto in Scorpio, that could be a murderer, but that could also be a shaman. You know, that is strong energy. So, I mean, I am lucky to be alive. Having looked at this chart, because Mars in Aries and Pluto in Scorpio, wow, that is super powerful energy. But I get at some level, this is like the lightning bolt of, I haven't even got to Uranus yet, which is the real lightning, but it's kind of like this strong energy, which is, I was talking about frozen trauma and unfreezing and cracking open your heart. It's like sometimes in life, particularly on a spiritual journey where you've done a lot of work, those last places, those last pieces of the jigsaw, those last pieces of frozen trauma, the last shards, they take a lot of energy to crack open and to shine the light on. And It's very easy to get to that point of, I've done all of my work, you're the one with the problem. But actually, if we can just keep coming back, where is this? What is this person showing in me? That my blind spot. This is the Wetiko blind spots that the book is talking about. Because if we're manifesting everyone out there, then they're a mirror of us. So whatever demon we're manifesting, it's like, where is that piece within me, and what is the gift? And if I can find the gift and shine light on it, I can transmute it, not just for me, but for her and everyone else on the whole planet that is carrying that trauma, that traumatic energy. So a couple of other interesting things is the sun. So the sun isn't in its home sign. The home sign of the sun is Leo, but actually the sun here in this chart is in Gemini. So again, it's a messenger. But it's interestingly, it's exactly sitting on my moon's nodes, which is my destiny in this lifetime. So this person is shining a light on my soul purpose, my dharma in this lifetime. It's like, wow, that is pretty strong. Now the other thing here is Jupiter. Jupiter would normally be in my home sign of Sagittarius, but in this chart it's in Cancer, which is the mother, and it's exactly conjunct Chiron. Exactly conjunct Chiron. And Chiron is the Achilles heel. It's the wounded healer. And this indicates, because Jupiter magnifies whatever it shines on, wherever it lands in a chart. Jupiter is the biggest planet. You could fit 1,000 Earths in Jupiter. So when Jupiter sits on Chiron, it is a wound magnified thousands of times, and that is sitting in Cancer. So this is a mother wound. This is a massive mother wound that we're dealing with here. Now, I'm sure those of you on your spiritual journey, talking about the mother wound, there's lots of different types of mother wound. We can have a very difficult relationship with our own mother. We can have had a mother who wasn't loving, wasn't kind to us, was critical, controlling, abusive. We can have that kind of mother wound. We can also have a mother wound in that we maybe have lost children, or we can't have children. So that can be another type of mother wound, where our relationship with our own ability to be a mother is somehow compromised. Hi Michael Day, too cosmic. Yeah, I learned a lot of this from you, Michael. Thank you. Michael is our friendly court astrologer and tarot man, tarot Mike. Anyway, back to this. So the mother wound. Now, obviously, at the nth degree, the mother wound is the wound of our planet, Gaia, the Earth, our Earth Mother, who is in pain right now because we've beaten her up. We've stripped her of her resources. We've abused her. We've disrespected her. We've plundered her. We've mined her. We've sucked all of the oil out of the ground. We've taken her crystals out of her crystal core and sold them at Mind, Body, Soul exhibitions as baubles, decorations. We burned her. I mean, we've polluted her. We've destroyed the oceans. I mean, you know, we've abused the mother. We have not respected the mother. So this mother wound at the nth degree, at the biggest kind of expression of the mother wound, is our wounded relationship with Mother Earth. And at the end of the day, if we don't sort this, if we don't find a way to sort this bigger mother wound out, this healing of Gaia, we are all fucked, people. We are all fucked. I mean, I went down to Bakewell. I walked down to Bakewell on Saturday to try and buy some vegetables and stuff for my Sunday roast lunch yesterday. And there's nothing there. I managed to buy some carrots and parsnips. That was good. Nothing. Empty. It's just like, oh my God. Luckily I managed to find probably the last piece of broccoli in Bakewell in the petrol stations. At least broccoli. It's just like, I've got all this money, but I can't buy any food, you know. And I used some of this wonderful free time to plant. I've planted some grow bags and stuff, and just thinking, well, at least in 6 weeks I'll have a few beans. But so anyway, and lots of people sending stuff. Yeah, I'm going to come on to coronavirus in a minute. Don't worry, that one's not going to not be mentioned. So the other interesting thing, talking about the healing of the mother wound and the Gaia wound, is that in these two charts coming together, they create a grand trine in Earth. So at some level, this alchemy is at some level facilitating a grand trine in Earth, which is perfect harmony on Earth, which is Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn combined, which are the three Earth signs, which is about material realm prosperity. So, wow. So that was a very interesting exercise, because I realized from doing that exercise that this at some level has been an absolute gift. And so I've been doing some very, very deep, fully feeling, fully healing, fully thawing, and big thanks to everyone who has helped me in that process. I had a very dark night of the soul on Thursday night, early hours of Friday morning, on Good Friday itself. The only time I've ever phoned Samaritans, like 3 a.m. that morning, no reply, and I just got, oh my God, I just got how many people are at rock bottom at the moment. And luckily I was looking, I phoned my therapist, Juliet, no reply. Tried phoning my son in India, no reply. Who else did I phone? And then I thought, I'll look on Facebook and I'll see if anyone's online. I tried phoning a guy in Peru who I thought might be available, who happened to be online. And bizarrely, I ended up getting through to an amazing therapist who I used to be on a shamanic circle with, and they really just held the space for me, and it was very powerful. I had a discussion with Sarah Jackson, who's on here. I phoned her in the morning, woke her up, had a wonderful chat with her. But then I had bizarrely, well, not bizarrely, because there's beautiful synchronicity in everything. My advanced trauma training group had, the only time we could schedule an online session was that morning from 10 till 12. And during that session, Juliet Yelverton, who holds the space for that group, and we are talking about this mandala in that group of such evolved, wise grandmother wisdom. I mean, we're talking about midwives, health professionals, therapists, very powerful women, and it's just such a privilege to be part of that group. So we had this 2-hour session during which Juliet and I was racked with pain. I mean, I could literally feel pain in every area of my body. My heart breaking, my stomach was just like, so, my head was aching. It was just like there was no part of my body that was not racked with pain. And I just got, oh my God, I've thawed all of this frozen trauma from my childhood, and I'm fully feeling all of the pain of my childhood that I could not feel when I was young is fully thawed and being felt right now in this period. Because of course, what used to happen to me when I was young, I used to be beaten round the head by my brothers, and they weren't doing it viciously, but they thought it was fun. And that was actually what my mother used to do to me as well, is she used to beat me around the head, but her beatings were very different. They were full of fury and rage, and I know that it came from the trauma of the war, from my grandfather, who was, I realised, had huge post-traumatic stress disorder from being in the war, and must have been a very difficult father to have had, full of rage, very controlling, very angry, full of rage. And so my mum, when she was triggered, was full of rage, and she took that out on me by beating me round the head. And I got in this pain that I was bringing back all of that frozen trauma of my childhood to be worked through. And literally I had, during that, in the breakout room session of that thing, Juliet gave me a 30-minute one-to-one, and I didn't actually mention one word of the story in this. That was the bizarre thing. She just literally took me on a somatic experiencing journey through all of my pain, and just like, I can't even, this is like pure magic. She healed, she held the space for me to fully feel it and fully heal it. When we fully feel it, we can fully heal it. And I felt every last piece of that pain heal and release from my entire energetic grid. It was just like, oh my God, thank you so much, because I've carried that pain for 50 years of my life, and it was just to be liberated from that. It was just like such a gift. And so of course I realize in being given this concept for this book called Liberation, this is the true liberation. This is the true liberation, to be liberated from the prison of unresolved trauma, of all of the pain, of all of the shadow. And we're all being given an opportunity right now to be liberated, to liberate ourselves. And the way we do it is through fully feeling. And this is the thing about the spiritual path, is that when, okay, so I'm just going to take you on another little journey here. And apologies, this is taking some time, but I've got a lot to download here, but this is very, very important. So in looking at this spiritual journey and in investigating all of these spiritual challenges, like that Jesus was taken through and the Buddha was taken through, I was reading about the four noble truths of the Buddha, and they are the first truth is that there is suffering, there is pain and suffering, and it's understanding that in every moment of this reality, this 3D reality, in every moment there is pain and suffering. Even in the moments of our greatest joy, even on the sunniest, sunshiny days, there is a seed of suffering, because we know that it can't last forever. And so pain and suffering is inherent in the 3D reality realm for humans. Pain and suffering is inherent in this experience, in this life experience. And so the second noble truth is the source of all suffering, the source of all pain and suffering. And this is the second noble truth of the Buddha. The source of all pain and suffering is in the delusion that we are separate, in the illusion of duality, which is you are you and I am I, and she attacked me and she's wrong and I'm right. in the yin-yang, delusion, illusion, because when you realize that we are all one and that we are manifesting everything in our world and everything is a gift, the gates of Dharma lie in everything, in every single person, every opportunity, and every experience. If we can pull back from the trigger, from being triggered into fight, flight, and hold the space, hold that stillness space to be able to look a little bit deeper of what is beyond this illusion of separation. So every demon that appears on our path holds with it a gift. And this is the essence of the Watiko book, is that we're being shown our shadow. And if we can shine light on the shadow and own it and shine light on it, we can heal it and transmute it. And then we never have to experience it again. So this is the second noble truth. And what better way for the great intelligence of this universe to teach us about separation than to physically hand it to us in spades by creating a scenario where we are physically separated from our loved ones, from our mums and dads and children. We are physically separated. We feel the pain of that separation. We're not allowed to go and see our mum. Oh no, Boris Johnson says you're not allowed to go and see your mum on Mother's Day. You know, this is the physical pain of separation. We're not allowed to go and see our friends. We have to stay at home. It's like musical chairs. Wherever you were at the moment of the lockdown, boom, you're stuck in the musical chairs. You know, wherever you landed, you're stuck there. Like MJ is still stuck in India right now, trying to get him back on a repatriation flight. So wherever you got stuck, whoever you were landed with at that moment when the music stopped, that is who you're having to journey with into this deep darkness where you aren't able to go out, you aren't able to be in your busyness, you aren't able to distract yourself with the busyness of running your busyness, and you're having to really sit and fully feel whatever that is coming up for you. So we're being given a real chance to experience what separation feels like and how painful separation is, this egoic illusion of separation, because when we start to realize it's all one, this leads us to the third noble truth, the end of suffering. The end of suffering. And the end of suffering is seeing through the illusion that it's all one. And then that takes some doing, because the illusion is so convincing that we're separate and that the big bad bullies are out there. But maybe the big bad bullies out there are just got so big now because we didn't want to look at the inner pain of being bullied or the guilt of being a bully. You know, it can work both ways. So we're being really urged to look within. And so the fourth noble truth is the route out, which is the eightfold path of Buddhism, which is not a step by step. First you do this, second you do this, third you do this. It's like a wheel. There's an 8-pronged wheel, which is the Buddha's guidance on how we can transcend this illusion, and we can live in a way that allows us to transcend pain and suffering, so that we can hold our center and we can start to lift ourselves out of pain and suffering and lift others out of pain and suffering too. So much deep insights coming through, and so just to complete this and just to return, and hi Zen Prem, and thank you to Zen Prem, who was at the time all this happened. It was just kind of like Rachel, the key is forgiveness. coming out of blame, coming into forgiveness. So I just want to take you back to the tarot, because what year are we in? 2020, and that is the Judgment card. So Judgment is the last final card before Enlightenment, and we're in 2020. This is the 20th card of the tarot, Judgment. Now, what is 2020? 2020 vision, seeing clearly 2020 vision, seeing through the illusion, seeing clearly that this is just a training program in love. That's all it is. We're spiritual beings who've been sent to Earth School, as David Charles Rowan calls it. Spiritual beings who've been sent to Earth School, and it's a training program in how to be love. And can we be love in every situation? Can we be love? Not love or send some love to someone else, or attract some love, or find love. Can we actually be love? Can we be the perfect harmonic resonance which ripples out across the world? And of course, being wounded and being human and having loads of childhood trauma, collectively through lifetimes of humanity and everything, and all of the horror and the war and everything that has happened on this planet, there's a big clear up act to do here right now. This inner clear up act and this external clear up act. And we are being given a massive opportunity to really go deep with this work right now. So Judgment, now this Judgment is the hurdle that trips us up every time on the spiritual journey, getting to that point where I'm more spiritual than you, I know more than you, I'm further on my path than you, I'm better than you, I know more, you're the one with the problem, you're the one who needs a bit of enlightenment, not me. Now I've done my spiritual training, but trust me, we are all on this path, and the further we get along the path, the more challenging it gets. Just like in a game, like in a computer game, you get past level 1, gets a little bit harder, level 2 gets a bit harder, level 3 gets harder, before you know where you are, you're facing Satan and you're being crucified, that this is the spiritual journey to enlightenment. So if we can transcend judgment, that overwhelming temptation to sort things into good, bad, right, wrong, yes, no, guilty, not guilty, you're the problem, I'm not, and we can start to get into that place of thank you for all my teachings, thank you to every teacher on my path, as painful and as difficult and as horrific as those teachers might be, those demons. We have to face every last demon, every last shadow, and it doesn't take all 8 billion people on the planet to do that, folks. You know what I mean? It doesn't take, it's not linear. This is the point. If we can transcend judgment, that's how we get to enlightenment. The world. 21st card in the tarot, but of course it's not the 21st card, it's actually the 22nd card. If you count the Fool, it's actually the 22nd card. It's the double High Priestess, 22. It's the evolved feminine Gaia goddess energy. And that's not to say nothing to do with men, but this is divine feminine energy coming through the world, where we can shed all of our material trappings and just be stripped bare and go through that eye of the needle. And that is what is happening at the current time. This is the interesting thing about the coronavirus. This is the interesting thing about the feminine energy, the tiniest seed, the tiniest microscopic seed, the tiniest cell, one single cell, each came from one tiny single cell. Look at the symbolism of this card. The tiniest thing can be the most powerful, and that is why the coronavirus is so tiny, because that is ingenious, infinite wisdom. So many people have been praying for transformation and peace on this planet. So many people in the collective are holding a vision of a transformed planet, of where we can heal Gaia, where we can live a life of peace and joy and love and prosperity, not just for me or my little family or my little town or my little country, but for every single being to be brought back into harmony and balance. That is the collective prayer of many millions of people right now, and the universe is answering through infinite divine intelligence, wisdom, by sending this coronavirus. How clever is this? Because we have our leaders who are all part of the patriarchal control system, mind programming that is all part of this justice system, the black-white, the wanting to hold this fight-flight in place, because it's very easy to control people when they're in fight-flight response. Don't want people being in the center in stillness. Want people to be easily triggered. So all of these leaders who are trying to keep the old ways together, what are they saying? We're going to beat the virus. We're going to battle through. We're going to conquer it. Isn't that brilliant, infinite intelligence to send an enemy so small, so microscopic, you can't even see it. We have no guns, no tanks, no nuclear bombs that can be dropped on this enemy. We don't even have vaccines that can be dropped on this enemy. And this is the thing about the judgment card. Let's transcend the judgment that the coronavirus is bad and has to be destroyed because it's the enemy. Maybe it's our greatest liberation. Maybe this is infinite intelligence giving us the greatest gift that humanity has been given, the greatest gift to stop our busyness so that we can fully feel and fully heal, so that we can co-create a different way of being on this planet, so that we can create a world for every being which is full of love and peace and joy and prosperity, so we can literally unplug from the old ways of doing things, which have caused so much devastation. So that is my Easter message to you, and thank you all for staying with me through that little labyrinth of which went all over the place. But just to come back to just to bring it back to the teachings of Jesus, the Holy Grail, why he said, I am the Alpha and the Omega. I am the light of the world. Follow this light. I am the light of the world. I am the Alpha and the Omega. I am the beginning and the end. And this is the Holy Grail, the Ace of Cups. This is the heart overflowing with love. This is the teachings of Jesus, that there is only one energy. There is only one reason for us to be on this planet, and that is to learn how to be love. And the only way that we will do it is to open our hearts and overflow with love. Love, loving kindness, compassion. Whether you're Buddhist, whether you're Christian, these are the core teachings of the great religions, is that this is just a training program in how to be love. It's all there is to it. And that's what we're being given, a huge opportunity to really look at every last shadow place where we are blocking out that light, where we are manifesting pain and suffering on this planet. And if we can just be in that place of heart overflowing with love and thaw out all of our frozen trauma, if we can fully go deep, deep, deep and look at those demons and transmute them, that is the ultimate liberation. Sending you lots of love. Bye for now.